This podcast is supported by Wesleyan Financial Services, providers of specialist financial advice to members of the legal profession. Wesleyan's team of dedicated experts have been helping law firms and their employees achieve financial well-being over many years, providing personal and commercial financial advice, in-firm seminars and online guidance. Strategic partners with the Law Society, Wesleyan is proud of its partnership with Women in the Law UK. For more information about Wesleyan, visit wesleyan.co.uk, or to arrange a financial education event in your firm or a no-obligation financial health check, connect with Sarah Deacon, Wesleyan Area Manager, on LinkedIn.
Hello and welcome to Talking Law from Women in the Law UK. I'm Sally Penni, MBE, a barrister at Kenworthy's Chambers in Manchester, and the joint Vice Chair of the Association of Women Barristers and the founder of Women in the Law UK. You can find out more about our organisation on Twitter, we're at Women in the Law UK, or online at womeninlawuk.com. On this episode, I'm talking law with Samantha Hillas QC, better known as Sam Hillas. A barrister at St John's Buildings Chambers, Samantha has a long-standing reputation in dealing with complex family cases in financial remedy work. I asked her why she wanted to become a barrister.
It's difficult to pinpoint any one point or any one factor about why I wanted to become a barrister. I was fairly confident and outspoken. As a kid, probably some might say rudely argumentative. And I can never remember sitting down and thinking, I'd really like to be a barrister when I grow up, or even thinking about anything I wanted to be when I grew up. But I do remember a friend in my class wanted to be a barrister, she said, and I thought that sounded quite cool. In terms of my route to the bar, once I'd decided that's what I wanted to do, I made choices to further that. So I chose A-levels I thought were appropriate. I did work experience in solicitors' firms, many pupillages, did a law degree. And where I came unstuck was when I got to bar school and was applying for pupillages in earnest. Because I was fairly confident and I'd done fairly well to that point, I thought it would be a breeze, but I didn't get pupillage.
Was that a shock? Was that a shock to you? Were you just expecting to, as you said, breeze it?
I don't think I expected to breeze it, really, on reflection. But I didn't think, having spent the last 8 or 10 years heading towards the bar, that I wouldn't get pupillage. So I suppose, yes, I did find it quite shocking. And I found it really disheartening for a time. Yes. As well. And so what I ended up doing was I knew that I had to stay in the law and keep my hand in. So I, first of all, got a job as a paralegal up in Yorkshire in an all-female solicitor's practice, which is where I met Ros. And then moved to Merseyside, which is where my husband is from. I moved to Wirral and got another job in another solicitor's firm and ended up requalifying because it was, to be frank, the only way to try and increase my very lowly salary as a paralegal. Yeah. And then eventually, after a few more years of making contacts and being good at the job, I think, and getting a reputation for being good at the job, I was offered pupillage in a fairly roundabout way, really, by a friend of a friend who was head of a chambers and thought that it would be a good move for them and a good move for me. So I started at Derby Square Chambers in Liverpool, and it folded not long after that, which I don't think was anything to do with the fact that I was their new pupil. And after that, moved to Atlantic Chambers, where I was for a few years, and I'm now at St John's Buildings. And as you say, I'm a new silk. So for all of those, and I know there are plenty because I used to be on the pupillage committee, at Atlantic Chambers, and there are a fair few applicants who have applied year on year and don't get anywhere. Just keep going. I mean, I had 2 or 3 years of round of failed pupillage interviews, which, as I say, were very disheartening. But if you keep going, if you persevere, keep making contacts. That's important, to keep talking to people and just persevere in terms of what you want to do and where you want to go, and hopefully you'll make it eventually.
Such great advice. Sam, can I ask you, did you know anybody who was a barrister? I know you talked about, the girl from school wanting to be a barrister, but I wondered if you had sort of mentors or sponsors or anything when you were starting out.
I didn't know any lawyers at all growing up. My dad's a scrap metal dealer, so he knew quite a few lawyers, but not in the way you might think. And really, I only met lawyers when I went to university and did a law degree, and we would have speakers come in, and the same at bar school. But it was just through networking, really, as an adult that I began to know lawyers. I didn't have a role model who was a lawyer to look up to when I was going through the process, which I now try and remedy as much as I can. I do try and do some mentoring. I go into schools where possible, because I do think it's difficult to imagine being something unless you see it. And I was quite lucky in that I persevered and kept the image in my mind without anybody really guiding me that way. And I also think it's really important, as you say, I'm Northern. I'm not from that kind of background, in terms of people in my family going to university.
Yes.
It's important to me for other people to see that you can progress being a woman and being Northern and not being posh and not going to the opera or going to the ballet. That's not how I was brought up. I'm not saying that we were, lived in poverty intellectually, but, we didn't have many books in the house. It wasn't that kind of background, really. But so it is important for people to see that you can be normal. But then I suppose I'm saying that I'm normal, and lots of people will probably disagree with that. I think I'm about as normal as I can be, hopefully.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, Sam, we are lawyers, to coin a term. We're at the bar. You've had the opportunity to be both, be a solicitor and now a barrister, a very successful one. Can we talk about, a memorable case in your life? Oh, actually, you could tell us about the Supreme Court case, actually, in a moment. But is there a case that particularly means something to you, or a defining moment in your legal career that you can share with us?
Well, I'm a family lawyer. There are lots of cases, countless cases, where at the end of it, you realise you've had or created a real positive change in people's lives. But because we're family lawyers, we can't talk about the details of those, and I don't necessarily think it's fair to do so. You've mentioned the Supreme Court case of Go Hill, which was fantastic. And of course, I can talk about that because the details of that are reported. It was a fantastic experience. But I think before that, and before the days of Twitter and social media, because of course everybody who knows me knows that I was in Go Hill, because by then we had Twitter and Facebook and LinkedIn and people can see it. But before that, I was involved in an Isle of Man case which went to the Privy Council, and that's when the Privy Council wasn't in the Supreme Court building where it is now. It was in a building in Downing Street. And that was absolutely fantastic. I was led by the sadly now departed Val Le Grice. But as I say, it was before the days of Twitter and social media. So I was really surprised to turn up on the first day and see all the press outside. I couldn't quite understand it. I mean, that was a real eye-opener, I have to say. And I remember nipping to the loo. I don't think I've ever told anybody this. I remember going to the loo during the day, and a journalist followed me in and gave me her card to say that, could I speak to my client for her to do an interview with the press? And that was my experience, my first experience of appreciating that some of the cases we do have such a massive, wider impact.
Yes.
So I suppose, Go Hill was fantastic, being in the Supreme Court with Sally Harrison QC, who led me, and of course being instructed by Roz, who's my best mate. It was a fantastic experience, and all the girls who worked with Roz, Jenna and Hannah, we had a great time whilst we were there. And of course, Sally did all the hard work. So it was a win-win really, in terms of great experiences.
I'm sure Sally would say you did the hard work, as juniors like myself usually do. But I wonder, Sam, if you can just give us, if people can find out about it, but in summary, what Go Hill did to family law, because it did change the status quo. Can you perhaps tell some of our younger listeners what that case was about, really, and its significance in law?
Yes, it was two appeals that were run at the same time. So it was co-joined appeals. There was a case called Charland and a case called Go Hill. And both of the wives in that case alleged that their husbands had misrepresented their financial positions on divorce. And that meant that when they reached an agreement with their respective spouses, they weren't fully aware of the truthful financial position of their husbands. And so both cases involved the ability of the court to set aside the original decisions and decide matters on the basis of the circumstances which had by then been discovered. So it's not right to say it changed the law, because, as we know, the law says that any agreement or any order that's procured by fraud will be set aside. And that's what financial non-disclosure is. It's fraud. But the process for doing so and the matters which the court would take into account were quite chaotic. And so what they did is make it clear and set out clearly the procedural aspects of set-aside cases and the circumstances in which the court would set aside and what the outcome would be if the court set aside cases. So it was an important case. And as I say, I very much enjoyed working on it. Let's hope there will be other cases, because we're all looking out, aren't we, for the next big, exciting case where we actually get a chance to change something and have a tangible effect on the law. So let's hope that's one of many. But I don't know if it will be quite such a pleasurable experience if I'm the one on the front row, I have to say. We'll see.
Yeah, well, I'm looking forward to it already. Tell me, Sam, I am a Black woman barrister, and Women in the Law is all about progressing, advancing, inspiring, supporting, connecting the next generation of lawyers. And I just wonder what you think about diversity in our profession, and really what the impact of COVID is going to have on that. Because we've made some progress, not good enough in my view, in terms of underrepresented groups, be it race or gender and social mobility. But still, it's not great. But what impact do you think COVID is going to have?
Well, I should say, first of all, I have 3 nieces, all budding lawyers, and I must have done something right, because all 3 of them say that they want to be family barristers.
Whoa.
I know. Dynasty, hey?
I know, inspirational.
Diversity is still a massive problem, in my view. We have come a long way in terms of women at the bar, and I'm mindful of the fact that when I was at bar school, which seems 100 years ago now, but wasn't, so 25 years ago, women couldn't wear trousers. And it was seen as a red letter day when they allowed women to wear trousers. I mean, it's astonishing now. I mean, my nieces wouldn't believe me that there was a time in relatively recent history where you couldn't wear trousers. But whilst the bar has come an awful long way in terms of diversity issues, one only has to sit at mess, for example, and look around and can see that we are not a particularly diverse profession. And it's important that we become a more diverse profession, because the people we're acting for are diverse. I mean, we act for people, of all genders, colours, ages, shapes, sizes. And it's important for them to be able to identify with the people that represent them. I mean, clearly, the primary objective is to find a lawyer who does the best job for them and gets the best outcome. But certainly the process would be made much easier if they believed that we understood where they came from. I always worried when I was younger, especially when I didn't get pupillage, that being northern and female meant that I was never going to be able to get on. And I do think in part that was because when I was doing mini pupillages, I didn't see anybody who looked like me. I didn't meet many people who sounded like me. And so we need to improve diversity at the bar, because it's really easy to become complacent. We've all, I think, in the last couple of weeks, been horrified by Alexandra Wilson's experiences. It's astonishing to think that a bright, clever young woman who's in a suit going to court gets mistaken for a defendant. And I mean, we've got to be proud of people like that as a profession. And fair play to her. She's a brave lass. She puts her head above the parapet and calls it out. Absolutely. And what's gratifying, I think, is that the profession as a whole, as far as I can see from my frequent Twitter trawling, are really in support of her. So we're going in the right direction. We probably need more Alexandras, and we will, because she will inspire. I mean, she will inspire an enormous amount of people to think, well, I can do that job. And hopefully they're not put off by her experiences, because they can see that we are going to change. In terms of the impact of COVID, it's important not to underestimate it. I know that there have been quite a few initiatives from chambers in terms of still getting many pupils in, because certainly I was able to make progress in my career by making contacts. And if you're sat behind your desk or sat at home for 6 months, it's very difficult to make those face-to-face contacts, but it's not impossible. I've had to think about it directly because, as I say, I've got 3 nieces. One's at bar school, 2 have just started their second year of law degree, and they're really worried about getting work experience. But you can do that remotely. I mean, we're working remotely. In some ways, it makes it easier to have mini pupils with you because they can join in from wherever they are. But it's not going to match the experience of having a live mini pupillage where you are travelling to court, you're meeting lots of different people. And I do think that initially we all kind of sat back a little bit and thought, well, this will all be over in a few months. Let's just batten down the hatches. It's now becoming apparent that it's going to be with us for a while. So all chambers are going to have to think about how they are able to offer work experience to ensure that people don't miss out. I mean, as I say, there are some advantages in that we're all accessible, aren't we? I mean, I feel now that I'm at work 24 hours a day because I'm at my desk at home. I had one solicitor. I'm not knocking him. Don't worry if he listens to this. The other night saying, how about a Zoom at midnight? And I was like, are you mental? No, not having a Zoom at bloody midnight. But, can you imagine 6 months ago, anybody asking if you can have a Zoom at midnight? It's just, the hours just roll into one, don't they?
Yeah, totally. Totally. And yes, I can't wait for Alexandra to come on here. And thank you for applauding her, because she is amazing. And I too have experienced being mistaken for a defendant as well. But it's a nice flow onto my next question, which is about well-being. What do you do for well-being? I'm speaking for myself. I probably drink too much, don't exercise enough. I've now got a treadmill. And the bar is a place that, sees a lot of burnout and not enough self-care.
It does. I'm not the poster girl for self-care, I have to say. For example, when lockdown first happened and everybody said, well, you can go out, you can do an hour's exercise every day. I was like, yeah, but you don't have to. It's not the law. You can sit at home if you want 24 hours a day and drink loads of cups of tea and smoke loads of fags. So, as I say, I'm not the poster girl for self-care. I used to be, and I just have the same excuse as everybody else, I think, that work ends up encroaching on so much of your personal time. I used to be much more sporty. I was a rugby player.
Yeah, I thought you were.
And yeah, that was a really big part of my life for a few years. I started playing at university. I played when I moved to London. I went to bar school. I played for Saracens. Then I didn't play for a few years when I moved up north. I played at New Brighton. And then I ended up setting up a team probably about, 12 years ago now at Birkenhead Park, the Birkenhead Park Panthers, as we were called, and still are called. The team is still there. It's just that I'm far too old and far too unfit to play for them. But I've never retired. I ended up stopping playing because about 3 or 4 years ago, my dad became very ill and was in intensive care for a few months. And so everything, work, rugby, everything just went out of the window. And it's a vicious circle, really. You don't play, you're not match fit, so you don't want to play. But I still say to the girls that I've not retired, and I still think there's another season in me. I've got my boots still. I might have to lose a few pounds to get into my shorts, but there will be a Hillas swan song on the rugby pitch, and I'll let you know when it is at some point in the future.
Oh, yes. I want to get a women-in-law crowd. We have got male members as well to come down there to cheer you on. I'll be right at the front. So I can't wait to hear that. But the important thing about playing sport, though, Sam, because you do sit on, or you certainly did sit on arbitrations and some of the sporting tribunals. Yeah. How did that come about?
I think it's what I was saying earlier about always looking for opportunities. These things sometimes fall in your lap, but it would be wrong, I think, to assume that there's no active or mindful perseverance in these issues. So, for example, playing rugby, I ended up, because I was a lawyer, you know what it's like as a lawyer. If anybody's got a legal problem, they come to you, don't they? So I ended up representing some of our players at disciplinaries. So, if on-field disciplinaries, so if you punch a player, you get suspended and you have to have a hearing about how long you're going to be suspended for. So I ended up representing some players. And then the World Rugby, it's called World Rugby now, were actively looking to recruit more judicial officers. And this is going back a few years now. And so just at the right time, I ended up doing a disciplinary appeal with an RFU panel, and they must have been impressed with the way I presented the case and my involvement in rugby, because you don't have that many female lawyers who really understand about the laws of rugby. You don't necessarily need to be female, a lawyer, or au fait with all the laws of rugby, but the combination works well. And I still do that now. So I'm a judicial officer for the RFU and EPCR and Six Nations and World Rugby. And it's it's not work, but it is work, I suppose. It's just a different strand. It takes your mind off family law for a moment. And I enjoy it. I enjoy it very much. But like every other aspect of life, it's all being done remotely at the minute. But it's interesting. It's another string to your bow. And that leads to other work as well. So I've done some disciplinary work for the International Netball Federation, etc. So that's worth thinking about, I think, for people who are going into the profession. Look at those kind of areas. You know, you don't just have to do a mini pupillage in a barrister's chambers. You could sit in some kind of tribunal. Every sport has a tribunal system. Find something you're interested in, and that may be a way into things.
Yeah, absolutely. So interesting, isn't it? Now, Sam, I always ask this next question. Favorite book and favorite fictional lawyer? Is there a book that, has inspired you, changed your life in some way, and that you can share with us? And then I'll come to the favorite fictional lawyer. And don't say Atticus Finch. Well, you can say Atticus.
Is that what everybody says? They probably do, don't they? I'm going to deal with them in reverse order, because there's not an awful lot I can say about my favourite fictional character. I loved Rumpole. Who doesn't love Rumpole? I mean, he's fabulous, isn't he? Just because he doesn't give a monkeys. That's why we all love Rumpole. And, of course, Martha Costello as Silk.
Yes.
That's a fantastic role. I like her. So I think that's it in terms of fictional lawyers. Books, I can't say there's a book that's changed my life. I'm a fairly voracious reader. I do a lot of reading. I can't sleep before or until I've read. I've even killed my Kindle, and they're unkillable, aren't they? I've killed a Kindle. I've had to get my second Kindle during lockdown. I think my favourite book is probably Wuthering Heights, which is a bit of a boring choice, but it's fantastic.
Great book.
Yeah, so I do a lot of it. I've got a bit of a guilty pleasure in terms of reading. I really like reading historical biographies about posh people. Aristos. I love it. So I've read a few during lockdown. So I read one about a woman called Enid Lindemann, who was from the Lindemann wine family. So she was Australian. She married a New York magnate. She married one of the Cavendishes. She married a Viscount. She married an Earl and outlived them all. And, there's Margaret, the Duchess of Argyll. I've read her biography relatively recently. Or when her husband was divorcing her in the 1960s, he accused her of having affairs with 88 other men. And I think all of these women have quite a lot in common. They all seem to lose their money and have lots of husbands and have lots of sex. But it is a bit of a guilty pleasure because, of course, it's horrifying, really, but fascinating to see that kind of life. It's so far removed from, any of my experiences. I don't know any aristos, and I'm not sure I particularly aspire to that lifestyle, but I do like reading about them. I do have issues with it, and I do have to check myself sometimes, because I remember going to Twickenham earlier this year before lockdown started in earnest. And one of the benefits of doing some of the disciplinary work is that now and again you get invited for the lunch at Twickenham, which is lovely. But you're not in your jeans and your boots. You're dressed up. And I remember waiting to go in and looking around and thought, oh my God, look at all these people in tweed jackets and red jeans, and they all look really odd. And then I looked down at myself and I had a really nice pair of like high-heeled suede boots on, and my husband was in a tweed jacket and I had a lanyard. And I thought, oh my God, let's hope when the revolution comes, they don't mistake me and I'm on the right side of the barricades. But yes, guilty pleasure, reading about posh people.
Wow, that is absolutely fantastic. Sam, can I ask you what's next? You are a Queen's Counsel, so you're part of the establishment now. There aren't enough women, in my view, in the judiciary. We're not a 50%, certainly. And there aren't enough of the judiciary from diverse backgrounds, if I can put it like that. You're a bright woman, and I wonder, might the bench be next for you?
Who knows, Sally? I don't mean to sound teasing that way. It's not something I ever thought that I would want to do. And I'm not saying it's necessarily something to which I currently aspire. As you say, I'm a new silk. I have undoubtedly ahead of me a period of consolidation and trying to build up my silk practice, because I had a very, very busy and full junior practice. But of course, there is a shift. There's a bit of an upward step. And so I need to develop my silk practice. But I do think the older we get, and the more we rise in our profession, we realise that being on the bench is a public service, really. So whether or not it's something we've necessarily aspired to do, it's not something I would ever rule out. I think it would be great to see or hear somebody with my accent on the bench, but who knows? I'm only so very, very young, Sally, that I've got a long time to think about things like that, haven't I?
Yeah, you certainly have. You certainly have. You're not quite as young as me. Sam Hillas, it's been wonderful talking to you. I wanted to remind you of something you said in the Talking Law book that I wrote to celebrate the 100 years since women were allowed to practice. And I just thought this was wonderful, and I wonder why. I asked you about 3 inspirational tips and advice for future generation of lawyers. You appear at page 104. For young people.
I remember.
Yeah, you remember. Can you repeat them, 3 tips?
1 was work hard. 2 was be consistent, which I think is really important, because there's nothing more discombobulating than trying to deal with somebody who, you never know what mood they're going to be in. So be consistent so people know where they are with you, and be kind. And I borrowed a phrase, I think, which is, you may not always be the cleverest person in the room, but you can always be the kindest. And I do believe in that. And I do worry, certainly during lockdown, I've looked at Twitter and social media so much more than I ever have in the past. And it does worry me how unkind people can be. And I think, I can't believe we're ending on this note, but, the world would be a much nicer place, and we would all be much happier, I think, if we were all a little kinder to each other. So there you go, kids. That's my takeaway from this. Be kind.
Thank you again for listening to Talking Law with me, Sally Penni. You can find me on Twitter at SallyPenny1. We'd love you to leave a rating or a review for us. And of course, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss an episode. Thanks to Wesleyan Financial Services for supporting this episode, and thanks to Sam Walker and our production team at What Goes On Media. Bye-bye for now.